Bueno, antes que nada, muy buenas, un gusto estar con todos ustedes. Para mí es un placer enorme poder hablar con Carlos Chatrian. Lo he hecho en otras oportunidades formalmente, alguna vez en un programa de televisión. Vamos a hablar en inglés, no en español, pero no puedo dejar de decir que los últimos años del Festival de Berlín, al menos para mí, fueron absolutamente significativos y esenciales de lo que corresponde al cine contemporáneo. Y de estas cosas y de algunas otras vamos a hablar. Como está para leer allí la introducción en español de la charla, lo voy a hacer en inglés porque corresponde. So, welcome everybody. It's a big privilege to me to be with Carlos Chatrian. As I said in Spanish, for me, the last couple of years, what has happened in Berlinale has been one of the most significant in terms of film programming and in terms of what it is nowadays contemporary cinema. So this talk, or this dialogue, or interview in a way, half and half maybe, I don't know. It's about to be the title of this is the limits of programming and the aesthetic of contemporary cinema. As you might know, Carlos Chatrian has been directing for the last 5 years. Now he's not anymore there, the Berlinale Film Festival. Before that, from 2012 till 2018, if my memory doesn't fail, he was in Locarno Film Festival as artistic director. And later on, he came towards the Berlinale. Before that, he has been working already in Locarno. He was film programmer. In a moment, he was in charge of the retrospective. And there are other several film festivals that he has been engaged and he has been programming. So it's someone who knows pretty well, at least in the last 20 years, what does it mean to program places, film festivals, and what does it mean to give visibility to certain films. At the same time, he has written a couple of books, some of them about significant filmmakers, like, for instance, Nanni Moretti and some others, or Nicolas Philibert. So I think this is the good start to begin. And first of all, Carlos, thank you so much for your time, for your patience, because I had been sending emails. You were in charge, you were in a jury member in another festivals. And I know that we sometimes timed in our times is the thing that we don't have. So let me welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Roger. Gracias. Es un placer de estar aquí. As you said, we will speak in English. I'm happy to try to answer to your question, or rather to have to engage a conversation with you. And yes, it's a little while that I've been programming, but there is always something to learn. So I'm eager to learn from your questions and from our conversation.
Well, I think that the first thing that I like to ask you, because you had been working in small festivals, but you had been working in one of the two more significant festivals. One is Locarno, which has a certain kind of tradition. Even Marco Müller was there in a moment, who imposed a certain kind of taste, a certain kind of risk. Later on, there was some other people. Then you came along with, firstly as a programmer, then you were directing, and then you were in Berlinale. So you have different perspectives about what does it mean to program according to the institutions that you are, plus, you know, you have been always following a certain idea of certain kind of intuition about cinema. So how was the relationship between what you see, feel, understand, and want, and the institutions around that? Sometimes it means a limit maybe, or a challenge that limit. So I would like to know what you have learned about that.
It's a, you know, Roger, it's a learning process. So it's hard for me to step outside, even if right now I'm not working for a festival, it's kind of complicated for me to look what I've done from an outsider perspective. It is true, as you said, that I strongly believe that there is no such thing than an abstract way of programming. When you work for a film festival or an institution or a magazine, you are part of that. Even if your ideas are very clear in terms of cinema, you want to interact with the people, first of all, with the people you work with, but also with the people you refer to. On one hand, we could call the owner of the company or whatever, but more importantly, the receiver, so the public in the case of film festival. So this is, for me, it's always clear that as a programmer, I put myself in as a matchmaker between the filmmakers, the people who make films, and the people who will watch these films. And sometimes I take decision because I think that the connection is not the right ones, is not the easiest one. So it's not only about my taste or the taste of the group of people I have the pleasure and the honor to work with, but also to understand what we can do as a group for the film and for the audience. And then, as you say, there are other limitations that are given by objective conditions. The moment in time when you work, the money you have. With a small festival, this is more relevant, maybe. The possibility to show films or not showing films because of external condition. You know, there are right owners that have ideas and so on. And this is something that it's important probably for the people who are listening to us to really be clear. Even the biggest film festival in the world, even the most powerful one, is always in a negotiation with the right owner, in the sense that it's always a dialogue. I want to show this movie, but then there are the people who make this movie that have their own idea and their own strategy. And this has always been the case, but I think it's more and more relevant nowadays, because especially for a big film festival, attending it requires an investment, especially if we are talking about big films. A small film is the same, but require investment. And therefore, people are paid to assess whether this investment is the good one or the bad one. So we have to put the idea of artistic freedom, of curatorial artistic freedom, always in that perspective. Of course, we are free to choose one film or another one, to say no, even to the biggest company. But at the same time, we are part of a system. We consider ourselves part of a system. So this is the first way to answer your question. The second way, in order to balance, is that it's obvious that by making a selection, we give an idea of cinema. We want to give an idea of cinema, or where the cinema go, or we want to, because there are certain films in every selection that are in a way obvious choice for whatever reason. The stature of the filmmaker, the presence of very important stars. But then there are and so on and so on, the relevance of the topic, whatever. But then there are other choice that are really choice, in the sense that we decide, okay, we want to put on the spotlight this film instead of that other one, because always you have to make a decision. And by doing that, of course, we give an idea. So in that respect, I really have to say, and it's not only me, but I'm speaking on behalf of a larger group, and I'm not talking only to the people I've been working with, but also people that work for other festivals. There is a group of programmers that try to show that there are many ways of making films, that not only the big box office films are the one that deserve the best spotlight. So this is something that always have driven me. First, when I was a spectator, then as a film critic, and then as a programmer. A festival is the place where you really can show the diversity, the variety of the films. For me, this is what I like, what I enjoy, but also there is a duty in that. So this is, I don't know if I'm clear enough, but this is something that even though I always say festival director are not the mighty power entity, but yes, we have a power to show that films can be something that is not the usual thing we always see in cinema or in streaming platform or whatever.
Just taking as an example, because I think this is the as a general view, it's quite clear that you have said. For instance, let me ask you about something quite concrete, because it has happened in the Berlinale, the last edition that was under your charge. And you made a big decision to include in the main competition a film that could have been rejected maybe as in other festival to be on the spotlight, but you have chosen to put it on, for me at least, from my point of view, on the proper way, in the proper place, which is Pepe, this strange film which has been done by Nelson Carlos. And I wonder, when you have that type of film, which are the doubts that you could have, not in terms that you like it or not, in terms if this could be enough, it could be a very it could be accepted. There will be enough openness in order to embrace this film in an audience, because it's a challenge to put that film in a main competition. You could have put it on encounters, for instance, but you have made that decision. So could you tell me a little bit, when you have to decide that, what are the criteria? How do you think about that? And how is the moment that you say, okay, we'll go with this film to this place and I will defend it?
Roger, you have chosen, I think, a good example, as not the only one, just to widen a little bit the perspective and also for the audience. That was the case in Locarno when we decided to put La Flor in competition, a film that is very challenging in terms of, I mean, not in terms of length per se, but programming a 13 hours film, it's already a challenge, because, or when we in Berlinale, we decided to give Radu Jude Bad Luck Banging film the main competition. There are always, this is referred to what I said. So on one end, it's different case by case, and it's always, for me, a matter of finding the right balance. So doesn't make sense to have all the weird, if we are considering this film weird, because they are narrative-wise not the usual. It's not good to have only the weird in one box. It's good to for me, that's the main thing. So I'm looking at especially when I am in a programming for a festival like Berlin, who has a strong market, but even Locarno as a, so I try not to show only the wild choice and to put all the wild choice in one category, because then there is a risk that the maybe not the viewer but the professional will consider the lineup less, because the goal, we have to say that the goal for festivals like Locarno, Berlin, maybe more than at least Berlin under my tenure, maybe more than Cannes and Venice, is to show that certain films have a potential in theater too. So for me, this is the difference. So as if I am sure that a film, even if it's great, has very little potential to hit the theaters, then I have other places to show the film. They have other places. But if I think, okay, I will take this challenge, this gamble, because I believe there is a potential for the film to be bought by distribution company and be shown in theater, then I go for it. So at the same time, I have to look at at the balance of the competition. So in the case of Pepe, we watched the film quite late, where the lineup was already done. We discussed it because at the beginning, to be honest, we thought we discussed with the producer and the filmmaker, and we thought that also the competition called Encounters could be the place to show it. But then after discussing with him and also seeing how Encounters was evolving and how the competition was evolving, we decided that we could take the chance to have it in the main competition. This is, I have an opposite example. The winner of the year before, Nicolas Philibert on the Adamant, it was an out-of-competition film until, I would say, December. We watched the film quite early. We invited. I discussed with Nicolas Philibert, saying that the competition is an option, but I wanted to see how the selection was evolving. And then seeing that the selection need a documentary, or need this kind of documentary, because it's not only the documentary, it's balancing, films that are more political in a direct way, films that are like this one are tackling the society in a more human-friendly way. So it's always matching things. So there is not one magical recipe. There is not one criteria. Of course, what stays as the bottom line is to feel that these films, especially, but I would say every film that play in the main competition sparkle something inside me, and hopefully not only inside me, inside the team. So we it's also a matter of we are human beings with our emotions, and certain films connect with us in a stronger way than other. And I think it would be hypocrite to say I don't take this element in consideration. I hopefully after 20 years I know I know how to bridge my emotion with the emotion of the audience. I know that's, my tastes are maybe not the taste of every audience, but I am quite sure when a film emotional wise can work. And on that, I can always fail, but it doesn't happen often, to be honest. So when something moved me emotionally, usually it moved the audience emotionally. So on that, I am, after 20 years, I can say that I have a kind of whatever sixth sense that helped me. It doesn't mean that the film is good or bad. It means that the film connects with the audience emotionally, which is also one of the elements. So yes, to answer to your question, a film like Pepe in this year's selection was important because it has a very unique style. It has a very unique narrative. It has also, for Berlin Film Festival, a very unique political discourse. It's a film for me, it's one of the best way to handle post-colonialism, which is a word that in Berlinale is being used and used and used. And usually the films that deals with that are driven mainly by an abstract speech. And this film reproduce a post-colonial reality, and from a non-European perspective, but in a very playful way. Then I'm at the same time aware, and I was aware, that the film was imperfect because of its nature. So I was aware that certain audience or journalists would be disoriented because you wait and you don't understand where you are going. But this is part of also of the job of a programming, as I said. Not to be afraid to take the wild choice, but at the same time, not to take the wild choice just because it's a wild choice.
There is something that I also have paid attention, and sometimes it's a very, very daring counterbalance about any programming and especially when there is competition, of course, which is how it's been fought, the whole idea of what does it mean a jury. I think you have been very smart in the way that you combine people in all the juries that you have done in Berlinale. You have also done the same kind of procedure and intelligence in Locarno. But sometimes I have realized that some other film festival, big ones, sometimes there is a gap between what they are offering as films and what the jury are about to be watching those films in order to understand something around those films. So could you tell us a little bit, how have you learned during all this year in how it's being composed, a jury, because there should be different elements, there should be also a variety, but what have you learned during these years?
Well, with jury is always a learning process, to be honest. I try to invite people, that at least some of them that I know beforehand, because the jury, it's mainly a human exchange. So what is more important is, well, of course, I hope that the films are relevant, but the time the people spend together, it's more relevant than the film itself. So it's to invite people, artists that are willing to exchange with others instead of imposing elements. And then, of course, you need to have, it's the same thing with the selection. You need to have different colors. So you need to have maybe some very vivid red. So some people, but it doesn't work if you put like 3 or 2 element like that, because it's gonna be a fight, and then it's no more about the films, but it's more about who is the strongest. I always try to be very careful in that respect. So then, as I said, it's a learning process, because the human factor is unpredictable, and is also good in that element. So you don't. But it's important for me to put together people that have a very different background, not only in terms of geographical provenance, but really the kind of movies they do or they refer to, and people that are bringing also different kind of idea of cinema, and without being afraid to have clash on paper. So when you have Lupita Nyong'o and Albert Serra, yes, they are very different one from the other, but then they are both human beings, and I try to speak with both of them and explain that the festival is a jury festival, is an experience of learning from, and it's amazing how every time I'm surprised, because the same was with the year before, Kristen Stewart. I was the one who was really advocating for Nicolas Philibert, but that was like very far away from me to win the main award. So you never know. I think that, yeah, you have to trust people. Of course, you have to trust people, and if you learn a little, if you just talking a little bit or looking a little bit with them, you understand what I put. When I'm in the process of inviting, I am quite careful, because something that you can understand very easily, if there is a desire to be part of the jury because you want to exchange and watch films, or if you are part of the jury for other reason. And I guess we can we don't have to go into details, but like more marketing reason. So if I feel that, or if I feel that it's more about the prestige, then I make a step back. I said, well, there will be another chance. And then, as I said, I try to, as it's also a matter of catching the signal that you receive. I try to understand, if the personality go along together, the personalities of the different juror. But as I said, it's always a nice surprise, and even though I'm very careful in avoiding contrast, I become aware that people tell me, "Oh, you were very brave in composing the jury." That was not my intention. I try to be as diverse as possible. Then I don't know the level of knowledge of the people listening to us, but it's clear that when you are in Berlin, you need, especially for the job of the president of the jury, people that have an international stature, but also you try to bring because with international stage show you have a very wide choice. We try to bring also idea. When we ask Kristen Stewart to be the president, we want to have someone very young and committed, and the same goes, and it went very well with Kristen Stewart. So you learn, and then Kristen Stewart, I knew her, so I had chance to talk with her beforehand. With Lupita Nyong'o, not at all. So, but then you become more confident because said, okay, Kristen Stewart was part of the jury, but she was very daring and very willing to exchange. Maybe, you know, people that do red carpet mainly, and they are completely in Hollywood system, they are not so afraid to exchange. And, you know, so you learn and you become a little bit more daring year after year.
You know, I just tell you something that happened. I'm a very good friend of Radu Jude, and the day that they were about to watch on the big cinema, the Palace, the Philip Carrel film. Radu insisted, come with us, come with us. And the whole jury was sitting there. I said, no, I can't go there. And he said, no, come. So he made me, I sat him besides him, and besides Radu was Kristen Stewart. So he introduced me, Kristen Stewart. For me, was very strange. So I say hello, and in less than 2 minutes, we began. I swear to God that it happened. She began talking about what kind of brain cognitive process it's been in the moment that you watch films in the proper speed or not. So how do you understand the shots? And so the whole conversation around 5 till 10 minutes was about that between Radu, Kristen, and me, which was absolutely strange to be talking about perception, speed, shots, compositions, and montage with a big star from Hollywood. That it doesn't look like that. She didn't behave like that. She was thinking about cinema, and I couldn't believe that. It was something completely unexpected. And I think this is the intuition on one hand that sometimes you have, but also what you have seen. And that is maybe the reason that you bring her over to be the main protagonist or the president of the jury. So I remember that it was absolutely unique from my point of view. You know?
I hope you were not talking during the film.
No, before, absolutely before. No, it was just 10 minutes in advance. And then the film, everyone was there.
But
I know.
There are some artists that we always, you know, Roger, we are human beings and we have prejudice. So we think, okay, because someone is doing a Chanel show, it's not interesting in other stuff. It's not always the case.
Yeah, I know, and I know that sometimes the prejudices are around, and especially with cinephiles, you know, like how could it be? And then it was a perfect choice. I was wondering now the other side of the stage, which is how is the working process with programmers? You have been always working the last couple of years with Mark Penninson on one hand. You have been working with mostly the same, not the same, but with a few people that you were before in Locarno, in Berlinale. So I assume that there was a certain kind of understanding. But even though, how is the process? How do you decide? You used to have the ultimate word. The last word, it was yours, or how do you think about that? How is the relationship between perspectives and decisions?
So Roger, I really have to go back to the beginning of my trajectory, and when I was a student in cinema at the university, I was not very happy about what I learned, because cinema and films, but it was more cinema in an abstract way, was kind of a dry land. So films were standing on the monitor, like on a table of a doctor, and then you can operate with them, which is nice. You can show how smart you can be, but it's less rewarding. And then I had the chance to alongside to that activity, which is important because it gives you also the tools, but I didn't like very much, to attend festivals. And festivals, of course, when you watch a film, you are alone. Even if you are sitting with among friends, you are alone for the time of the film. If the film is good, you are really alone. With the film, you are not alone. You are with the story you are watching, with the images and the sounds you are listening to. But then when the film is over, especially in festivals, I felt, and that was really, for me, great discovery, I felt that I was in a different process. I was part of a group of community where, usually we had the same take on films, but not always. And that is for me the beginning of the programming. When you watch one film and you feel the need or the urge to talk with other people, you have watched the film maybe early on in the morning and exchange, this is, and find connection. So for me, programming, because I think when you write, you are also programming. If you write about a film, you select one film among sorry, this is something I have to say. I never had to write about films that I didn't like. I always have the pleasure to write about the films I like. So I choose the films because I didn't write for newspaper, but rather for reviews of magazines. So for me, the programming as a work started already as a film critic, and it was always a matter of being part of a group. You know better than me, and as you mentioned, Mark Parents on CinemaScope, which is a great review and doesn't exist anymore, is also a place for a community, scattered all around the world, but a community where sometimes you disagree with other people writing, but you feel that you have someone, more than someone to talk with. So and that was the same thing I found when I started programming. I was always in a collective element. And as I started not as a director of festival, but with other people directing, it was always clear to me it's like la règle du jeu. So it's the rules of the game. I know that as a programmer, I have the complete freedom to say whatever I want and in favor or against one film, and discuss in a very, us Mediterranean people are very passionate, in a passionate way. But then it was not my call whether the film was in or out. So when I was asked to run Locarno, which was the big job as a programmer, as a director, the first really task was to compose this group, knowing that I need to have people that I know a little bit, but also I need to have people that I don't know, because otherwise you are just talking to yourself or to your peers. And I was lucky, probably, because the group of people I put together in Locarno were great. And it took me a while. This was really my job, to have all of them together, to give them because I consider the director more the person who give the room for everyone to speak. There are people that are at ease in speaking openly, speak up. When other people are there are other people then maybe they are not that easy, or they don't find that so easy, or maybe they need more time to. So this is my job, to understand whether there is something that has not been said and need to be said, maybe in a private conversation, or maybe need to be rediscussed, and so on and so on. So it's never the case for me to say when we are discussing, guys, whatever you say this film is in, or whatever you say this film is out. Probably after a while we know each other and we understand when someone is fed up or whatever, or this opposite is, but it's always and this is something that happened already while you are watching the film, but it's never the for me it's never the matter, or it's in and out. It's more to understand what this person want to say about the film we have watched. And that was the case in Locarno. Then when I was asked to move from Locarno to Berlin, I thought that the reason was because we have done a good job. So like in a very probably childish way, I not generous, maybe more egoistic. I asked all the people I was working with, do you want to come along? Because it was like the result of the work we have done together as a group. Then, of course, in Berlin, the group has been enlarged with other people. And also there was an effort from my side, especially, to not to decide who is right and who is wrong, but more to have everyone in the conversation. And sometimes it's not easy because you have people with more assertive thoughts than other, you have people that are more patient than other, and so on and so on. So it's a process, and it's something that sometimes goes against any rational thought, because sometimes it would be easier to say, look, we don't need to discuss about this film. But for me, it's not about, in the end, the film is in or out, but understanding what are the thought behind that, because that helped me also in maybe not in taking the decision for this specific film, but rather to understand what is missing, what this programmer is saying is missing by not taking this film, or what we should include by taking this film or not. It's kind of abstract, but it's hard to, yeah.
No, it's quite understandable. And I think it's more or less what I can imagine. It's something that repeats in different festivals, but also the culture that you are in. Is one thing is to be working in Mexico, another thing is to be working in Italy, another is in Germany or in Switzerland. It also, there is idiosyncrasies behind institutional culture, stories, history.
Yeah, but this is something, Roger, that I always say, institutions, the place you work, it's more relevant that my taste, and so not that my taste can change, but I adapt them. But what I am quite convinced is that you cannot change your culture. So I'm Italian, even though I'm from the north. So maybe when I go south in Italy, I don't sound as Italian as I said. But you cannot change that. You cannot change. And when I was working in Berlin, I was totally aware that there was a different way of expressing. But you cannot change, because otherwise you like censor yourself. For me, it's not only about the words, but also the body language, the passion, or whatever way you. So this is something that it's impossible for me to eradicate myself from the cultural I have been growing up with.
But at the same time, I understand perfectly well what you say. You cannot impose anything on one hand. You have to be very perceptive in order to understand where you are. At the same time, you were being called by, in this case, by them. So there is already some recognition. We need you because you have a vision, so you can infuse that with what we are. But at the same time, there is always, let's say, the inner process of learning a language, a way of being, institutions, and so on. But you have done something which was, on one hand, very daring, for me, fruitful in a way, not always completely understood, but at the same time, I think it's one of the traces that you have left. I don't know if that will go on or not. I mean, encounters. You brought up a new section for the festival, which was not what it used to be, Berlinale Forum, which has a kind of openness towards certain kind of diversity, but it was not that, and it was not the main competition. Can you now, after 5 years, how do you see that innovation for the festival?
Well, that's in a way funny, because for me it was a kind of evidence at the beginning that the festival need, I wouldn't call a second competitive section, but a different competitive section, or a different section competitive because that's the best way to highlight films that struggle to be recognized. So that was kind of evidence, but it was not an evidence at all for the people who have been working at the festival or have been following the festival. So this is something that it took me like a while to understand this big gap between my point of view, and hopefully not mine, and the point of view of people attending. So for them, the festival was already big enough, or whatever adjective you want to use, to cover all the field. For me, no. For me, there were and there are films that didn't fit this category. Of course, you can always choose them and then place sometimes in competition, sometimes in panorama, sometimes in forum. But, a section is also putting the films together to show something as a group of films. Especially, I'm referring to people like you who are film critic and have the possibility to have a comprehensive vision. Because then if we talk about a viewer, I believe most of the viewer, yes, probably they do care about the main competition, but they watch the film and it's the best way. They watch one film in competition and another one, and then they compare. But festivals are also part of, as I said, an ecosystem which is very competitive. And therefore, if you have just one big box with 100 movies, there is a risk that everyone will fade away, and only the ones that are supported by money will get a recognition. So in that respect, for me, was a kind of evidence, because there is a different way of making films. And the films that played in encounters were films that were done not with big money, but with a lot of care and a lot of new ideas. So, I to be honest, I didn't care if this film were good or bad. Of course, I selected. I hope they are good, but it's more they are different. They are different, and they deserve a place. And that was driving me. And this is for me the result, of course, of the work of selection I've been doing in Locarno, but also of the result of the big switching that happened 20 years ago from the analog to the digital. So to shoot a film today, it requires nothing. It doesn't mean that the films are good, but it requires nothing. Meaning it means that filmmakers have a great freedom to express themselves, because they don't have to rely on producer. They don't have to rely. I mean, they do have to rely on producer ultimately, but at the beginning they can really start writing with their with the camera. In the 60s, when the 60s, when the 16 millimeters camera came, I mean, they were already there. The French Nouvelle Vague said camera stylo. Yes, for that time was camera stylo, but I think so, like a pen camera. But now the camera are really much more than a pen. You have the camera always with you, and there are some filmmakers that do like this. So and this is something that I because I'm attending festival, I always had the opportunity. There was not present as a structural thing in any other film festival. Not in Cannes, not in Venice. Of course, there were films, but not structurally composed as a place also for the filmmakers to find themselves. And then, of course, you always have also this kind of movie in other sections too. But the fact to have a competitive section to put, it's also to highlight something. It's like, it's like showing that, there is a different way to making films. And these films are not only for smaller film festival. You started with that, and it would be important to say something about the fact nowadays big film festivals are swallowing everything, and maybe it's not good, but that's the result. So this is also the fact that because of the global world we are living, once a film is shown somewhere, even if only a few people can watch it, it becomes already old. And that is it's a fact. Unfortunately, it's a fact. Therefore, the big film festival have a bigger role to me, because once a film is shown, it's very hard for another, I mean, smaller festival can show it, but it's very hard if this film has not been recognized to be recognized afterwards. It happened, but it requires a lot of energy from people like you, whereas where a film is shown in a big film festival, it's recognized, then it's very easy. I don't know. I think that smaller film festivals are more lazy, or maybe lazy is not the word. They are more crushed by this global community. So,
yeah, I understand very well. There is something important in what you say, because sometimes I have realized that many films are rejected in biggest festivals, less bigger than Berlinale, but I work in some of them which are not extremely small. And sometimes I realize that some films are rejected just for questions that nowadays is being coined like there is not enough value production, because it has been done. But the film is fantastic; it's absolutely alive. And how could you reject the film like that? But I realized that the real reason that those films are rejected is because that. And this is something that I really embraced from the very beginning, the section, because it was a section encounters that you could see that's not an objection. It's not a question to be rejected for that. And that is unique from my point of view.
Yeah, look, Roger,
El festival y forjando su propia identidad. Una identidad que, aunque está en constante transformación,
there is a sound from Angel
15 años
that
de
came from
su trayectoria.
I thought it's a moment where we have to
he doesn't realize.
Basada en la ambición, la programación.
Anyway. No, yes. At the same time, I don't deny that. Okay, production value is something that exists when I go to a cinema, and something that I don't know if I will be in Cannes, but I'm looking forward to watch Megalopolis. The title itself tells something about. So when you go to cinema, you have also that other element. You want to be confronted with something that is bigger. And in that respect, I do understand that production value is not something like only a marketing tool, but it's not the only thing. There is a film that is not my favorite one, but it was when I was in like a little bit more than in my 20s, a big success, Clerks, which is a film that was a great success, but according to the at the time, luckily enough, there was no production value, because production value of this film was basically zero. And so what I'm saying is that right now, and it's good that you mentioned that, there is, and we are not even fully aware, the market is really driving everything. When we talk about production value, we are talking about market potential, which again, it exists, but it's not the only element. It exists, and I think a festival like Berlin shouldn't forget about that. But it's not the only element. And there are films that on paper have little production value, and in the end, they reach out to a lot of people. And considering the production value is the only thing, it's not good. It's not good for the job we are doing. We are fooling ourselves, and especially we are fooling the people that are ultimately watching the film.
Mm-hmm. Carlo, how do you see the importance, because each festival nowadays has changed the way of working with catalogs, especially after the pandemic. I don't know why. Every big festival, there used to have a catalog. Now there is not. It's only digital. But I remember when you were in Locarno, there was a special focus on writing on the films. Mark was writing on the film. There was a magazine, and even the text when the films were introduced, the way that the films were introduced, also was a kind of an extra, of a plus done by words before and after, and that accompany the films. Nowadays, it's very difficult to find that in big festivals. And how do you see that process? Because I think writing on film from the people who do the festival, talk about with the filmmakers and by themselves, it's an important pedagogical, let's say, tool. and most of the time it's not being used as I see in big festivals nowadays. I don't know, how do you perceive that?
Yeah, I know that I am in a way guilty for that, and I agree with you that having the possibility to express something with words or videos, because it doesn't have to be only words, but yet words stays, and people can refer to words in a different time than with video. It's very important. It's for Berlinale, the decision not to have the catalog was or rather not to have the text, because we have reduced them, was the result of well, first of all, economical limits, because it's you have to, when you have less resources, you have to decide where to put these resources. But I would say more importantly, the fact that the festival is very big. So if you want to do that, you have to do it for every films. And then there were sections that were considered a little bit left over. And also this is something I have to say now that I don't work anymore at the festival. With Berlinale, the biggest problem was to embrace the entire program. And because the Berlinale was structured in such a way that each section has a kind of independent, and it was a kind of hard for me to stepping in and say, look, this text doesn't represent exactly what I. So with the people I work with in a closer circle, I can do it. But with a section, I didn't want to do it. I could do it, but I didn't want to do it. And so I always felt that there was a lack of unity in the way the films were presented, and that was probably unconsciously, or maybe also consciously, I don't know, give me less. How should I say? Give me less energy to fight against. Because in the end, if you want to do something, even if you don't have the money, you do it. But it's always a matter of, okay, what do we want to achieve? If in the end we fight and then we achieve something that is only half of the result, it's in Locarno, you know, the festival is, from the programming side, is much smaller. Not the number of films, but the programming team was much smaller. So we could embrace everything. And also the public in Locarno, I think it's different from the public in Berlin, which is less cinephile. So you have to provide more information. But yes, mainly is the way we talk about film. The way we talk about film. I still believe in 2024 that we should talk about film as film and not as a way to talk about other stuff, which are important. But that is in Germany, at least, you have work in Germany, is not always the case. And as I said at the beginning, it's important also to, when you step into an institution, to learn and understand what is the institution about. You know, so this was like something that I accepted or even push, because communication is important, but if you want to handle communication, then you have to be coherent. If you cannot be coherent, then it's maybe better to say less.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And how, just more two questions in order to close, but I like to know, how do you perceive, because you have a kind of, let me tell you in this way, privileged space. You had been in this privileged space in order to be sensing, in a kind of like a seismographer. Like you have been able to have the senses of where is going on nowadays, where is the cinema heading on. What are your intuitions or your hunch? What is the main transformation or mutation that you have noticed during all these years of watching new films around the whole world and film from the world coming to you?
That's a very
it's not easy, I know.
Difficult question to answer, because it's the good thing is that, I mean, what happened in my life is that whenever I had the feeling that the cinema was going to certain place. Cinema as a movement. I'm talking about the independent cinema. And then also we should spend time to talk about what is independent cinema. Let's say the more independent one, the one that is done without the presence of big player. Let's put it in that way. So without the presence of big studios, big companies, big streamer. So whenever I had the feeling that independent cinema was going one way, the year after I found films that were readjusting. It's always a matter of readjusting. I don't know if it's me that I'm looking for always different things, but I don't have to be honest, I don't have an answer. Right now I would say that what interests me and what has interested me in the last decade is the hybridation, the fact that filmmakers are more and more. It refers to our reality. Our reality is less and less one thing. It's more and more many things at the same time. It's more the very low and the very high. It's more the very poor quality-wise and the very refined quality-wise. It's more the political element and the surreal element together. So I feel that done in very different ways. Aung San Suu, which is probably the most pure filmmaker, still in each film decided to hybrid his narrative with different elements. Filmmakers like Radu Jude, they are constantly, in a very more expressive way, working with this hybridation, using pre-existing material and combining with footage and whatever. So what interests me is this I don't know if the word hybridation is the right one, but this is a way to to reproduce our reality by not avoiding clashes, by not avoiding element that shouldn't be together. And I think this is also a political value. So of course but then, as you know, Roger, what is funny, good, but also very provisory in cinema is that always, this is clear for me, the more I talk about films, the more I talk about me, the more I talk about what I'm looking in these films. And maybe another person could say the opposite. It's cinema, films as such doesn't exist. A film exists only when it interact with my eyes. So this is something that I am convinced. I don't want to sound too relativistic, but it's a reality. It's always you watch a film and then you watch the same film 20 years after, and sometimes even the story it's completely different. And I think this is the amazing that films. That's why I always say film is always at the present time, because interact with you in that time. Now I'm 52. I watch a film, and sometimes it's also a matter of taste. A film that you dislike completely, you end up liking, not because the film has changed itself, because it's the combination of you and the images and the story. So it's more about what I'm interested in. So I'm interested in this kind of reality that is not pure, that is not perfect, that is something that is it's very hybrid.
I understand. I like very much the examples that you just mentioned, Radu Jude or Mr. Aung San Suu. They are quite obvious cases, I think. Not obvious, but they are good examples of something about contemporary cinema. I will now give the counterpoint, which I'm interested in. How do you perceive? You had been working in big festivals, but in the past you had been in charge of retrospectives. So how do you think nowadays film festival can improve the relationship between present cinema with the history of cinema, even the hidden part of the history of cinema, which sometimes are not known? So how do you see that kind of integration in film festivals?
Well, I think there is, and this is, if we look at the reality of film festival, the biggest element of of discontinuity is that in the last 20 years, the most relevant film festivals that pop up are not festivals dealing with new films, but festivals dealing with the history of cinema. Lumière in Lyon, Cinema Ritrovato was existing already before, but now it's something different. It's something bigger, and there are more examples of that. So on the one hand, I think that this kind of work was done previously by either the Cine Club. I think they exist also in Argentina, but in Italy you had this Cine Club, which are places where they were showing maybe once a week old films because they were cheaper, and you enter only with a pass, not by a single ticket, but you buy all the and by some festivals. Then the festivals reduce the room for retrospective, mainly because of money issue, because doing a retrospective, it's a luxury. So I was very happy and very privileged in being able to do retrospective in Locarno, because we could do really extensive retrospective, finding the right copies. But I do understand that not all the festivals do have the money for that. But also, as the production is every year increase, it's bigger in terms of quantity, maybe not in quality, but in quantity. The festival, especially the big ones, they are like a huge filter. So in Berlinale, we receive 8,000 movies, and then I managed to narrow than 50, but still. But if you compare 8,000 movies and 250, the selection is huge. At the same time, 250 movies is still a lot. So you don't have room for. So on the one hand, festivals that are also taking charge or taking responsibility for what movie theaters don't do anymore. So festivals have become, in the last 25 years, a parallel net, a parallel way of showing films. There are films that are shown only in festival, but in the end are seen by maybe more people than a film distributed in theaters, you know? I had this good example of Cavallo di Nero that was in Locarno by Pedro Costa, who got very little theatrical distribution, but he went in more than 100 festivals. So if you count the viewers, maybe more people have watched this film than another one that has been. So festivals have this job, and this is good. I think it's good because they provide something that was once provided by movie theaters. What they have put aside is the work of combining new films with old ones. And this is something I remember we talked also when I was in Locarno. It's something that for me, it's essential. Even in Berlin, I always watch the film of the retrospective before doing the selection, because the only way to have a comparison for the quality is to look back. But it's not to look for this kind of movie, but to say, okay, we come from there. And now cinema is a different thing. A traveling now, it can be done in a different way than in the 50s, but still it's a traveling. So cinema, it's a very peculiar language, but still is a language. So it doesn't have a grammar, probably it's a syntax. And if you know the syntax, it resonates in a different way. And I think it's important to be aware of that. And I have to say that the new generation, they have a bigger lack of knowledge in the history of cinema. Probably because nowadays you have so many new films to watch that then you lack of time, and then you have the series, and then you have other online content. So you lack of time. But if you don't know the past of the art you're working with, it's very hard to, not to be objective, but to have a ground upon which you can put your. So on the one hand, there is a lot of hope because there are new entity or festival, and I think even institution like museum, they have a great they have a great task, they have a great job to do there. On the other hand, it's true that Cannes, Berlin, Venice, they don't do Berlinale still does retrospective, but they do Berlinale Classic, which is nice. but it's just a way to promote old films as they are brand new. So I was like very amazed when the first time when I was told, but we are selecting only world premiere for retrospective. What does it mean, a world premiere? For the film is old. It's yes, probably it's the first time you show a new, but it's really stretching the concept of a world premiere and giving the relevance more to the world premiere than to the film itself. So it's more important the status, which is really turning the reality upside down. I am quite confident that in the future there will be more and more interest because it's already there for old films. This is just my feeling.
It has been so nice to listen to all what you have said. This last answer for me, it's something very important because it's something that I think it should be discussed in the way that you have put it in words, and I am really appreciate that. And I appreciate so much, Carlo, your time. We have been talking for more than an hour. And it's a privilege for me, and thank you so much. Tante grazie. Muchas gracias.
Por favor,
so
es un placer, como siempre, hablar con usted, con vos. I hope it's not to be too long and too boring, but there is always the edit that can cut things out. And,
no, it is not boring at all. Believe me, my friend, it has been fantastic. Better than I expected that it would be fantastic, but it was the best. The best, believe me.
Okay, be strong and
thank you so much.
Cinema in Argentina, especialmente.
I'm fighting as much as I can. It's such a difficult moment, not only cinema. You cannot imagine what we are living. It's
I was with Martin Rechtman last week, and we were talking a little bit about how life is art now in Argentina.
Yeah, it's very hard.
I am with you in spirit.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye-bye, my friend. Thank you.
Bye-bye.